In a statement, the executive director of Iranian Americans for Liberty, Brian E. Leib, said, "We will continue forward on our stated mission and we will continue exposing the Iranian regime's apologists in America." The statement says the recent article in Responsible Statecraft by Brian Metzger titled "How Shadowy, Hawkish New Group Tied to Iranian Monarchists is Gaining Influence in Congress" purports several blatant untruths about Iranian Americans for Liberty and our organization's work putting the lives of Iranians abroad and their families at home at grave risk. Leib also declares we are a bipartisan group of Iranian Americans who are deeply committed to peace and prosperity for the Iranian people, as well as the national interests of our adopted home, the United States of America. Our board of directors is committed to ensuring Iranian Americans for Liberty will always be a bipartisan organization. Our board consists of Democrats and Republicans. In addition, we have in the past and will continue to organize and host events with both Democrat and Republican members of the Iranian American community. We, like many members of the Iranian American community, reject the false narrative of having to choose between being either a mouthpiece that pushes the propaganda of the Islamic Republic of Iran or warmongers. Indeed, this false choice is deep-rooted in a manufactured and patently false dichotomy propagated by the Islamic Republic of Iran's propagandists inside Iran and around the world. This false dichotomy incorrectly asserts that the free world and the United States either have to appease the regime of Iran or start a war with them. There are certainly more options in the advocacy realm than these two choices. 4 weeks ago, Iranian Americans for Liberty embarked on an educational campaign to highlight the problematic role of the National Iranian American Council as a suspected chief Washington, D.C. lobbyist for the Islamic Republic of Iran. Among other topics, our campaign exposed how National Iranian American Council has protected the Islamic Republic government from any scrutiny over its mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic through the mass dissemination of misinformation and falsehoods. Shortly after the campaign began, National Iranian American Council and its affiliates started targeting Iranian Americans for Liberty in an attempt to intimidate us and silence our voice. Responsible Statecraft is part of the Quincy Institute and has close ties with National Iranian American Council. Trita Parsi is a co-founder and executive vice president of the Quincy Institute and also the founder of National Iranian American Council. Mr. Parsi started his career as a staffer for disgraced Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, who was investigated for and subsequently resigned in the aftermath of his involvement in arms sales to the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was a direct violation of the US sanctions on arms sales to the Iranian regime. We believe that this article from Responsible Statecraft about Iranian Americans for Liberty was clearly written at Mr. Parsi's direction in response to our recent educational campaign and as an attempt to undermine IAL's critical work. Though ironically, the author asserts that Parsi had no role in the article's publication. Let us be clear, Iranian Americans for Liberty is not receiving and has never received funding from any governments and has no connections to the individuals that are named by Mr. Metzger as recipients of State Department funds, including Mr. Amir Etemadi. If Mr. Metzger or RS had any interest in responsible journalism, they could have independently verified these facts. Iranian Americans for Liberty has no affiliation or ties, formal or informal, with Mr. Etemadi. It is up to Mr. Etemadi to clarify on what basis he received funds from the State Departments and how he spent those funds. The smear attempt by Responsible Statecraft is very similar to the tactics that National Iranian American Council has used for years to silence their critics in the Iranian American community. In addition, Iranian Americans for Liberty is funded and continues to be funded by members of the Iranian American community who support Iranian Americans for Liberty's mission statement. Iranian Americans for Liberty believes the fate of the Islamic Republic should be solely determined by the Iranian people. Neither the US government nor lobbyists of the Islamic Republic should interfere by providing support to a state sponsor of terrorism that actively finances and encourages sectarian and religious wars and violence. The world should condemn the National Iranian American Council for knowingly putting the families of its critics in harm's way, and Mr. Parsi for acting as a front for the terrorist Islamic government in Iran. In closing, Iranian Americans for Liberty will always do everything in our power to be an amplifier of the voices of the Iranian American community as well as Iranians living in Iran. We will always be a denier of the Iranian government's efforts to achieve its nefarious goals. If responsible statecraft, the Quincy Institute, Mr. Parsi and National Iranian American Council thought their article would scare us, they were foolish. We will continue forward on our stated mission, and we will continue exposing the Iranian regime's apologists in America. Video posted on social networks shows poor people survive on the leftover food and collect reusable items from the garbage in Iran, yet the Islamic Republic spends billions on terrorism. Graffiti on walls in Iran shows public rage against the regime's malicious activities. Written in Farsi, "No to the Islamic Republic. Reza Shah rest in peace." Drinking water supplies for Kuhmare Kazarun, southern Iran delivered in tanks. The Islamic Republic turns a blind eye to famine and water shortage in Iran, yet it spends billions on terrorism. A group of people whose assets have been stolen by the Tehran Stock Exchange held a protest over Islamic Consultative Assembly. Iranian man captured video saying Iran is not for sale. The retirees of the Social Security Organization in Iran held a protest over financial difficulties and unpaid wages. Retirees in Isfahan, central Iran protest over financial difficulties and unpaid wages, chanting, "We do not vote anymore." Graffiti on walls in Iran shows public rage against the regime's malicious activities. Written in Farsi, "Long live the king." Iranian man in Tehran captured video saying no to the Islamic Republic and long live the crown prince. Graffiti on walls in Iran shows public rage against the Islamic Republic. Written in Farsi, "No to show election." According to the latest statistics, at least 22,586 people with COVID symptoms were identified, and the number of positive coronavirus cases in Iran has passed 2 million. Anti-regime stickers carry messages of defiance, wrote in Persian, "I do not vote." According to the Baluch activist campaign, the 41-year-old brother shot dead his 30-year-old sister with a shotgun for alleged family disputes. Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says trucks containing arms and Tehran-produced weapons, including middle-range missiles, have been dispatched to Deir ez-Zor.